I didn't plan on telling this story. Honestly, I thought I could leave it buried with the noise, the smoke, and the screaming. But the truth has a way of crawling back up when you're alone at night. I was in the VIP section at Astroworld, close enough to see everything, and too close to pretend I didn't. What happened after the lights went out that night wasn't just chaos, it was calculated. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The text came late at night, the kind of hour where your phone lighting up feels like an alarm. It was from Ray, a guy I'd worked with years ago on a touring production. Back then, I was the one who could fix a busted zipper or steam a crumpled jacket minutes before someone stepped in front of a camera. In this business, people remember the ones who make problems disappear. Ray never wasted words, so when he wrote, "Need someone for VIP at Astroworld, pays well. Keep quiet." I knew two things. First, it wasn't a casual favor. Second, I was saying yes before I even knew the details. 3 days later, I was at the NRG Park grounds before sunrise. Even at that hour, the bones of the festival were already taking shape. Trucks backed up to loading bays, hydraulic lifts whining as massive steel frames were hoisted into place. The air smelled faintly metallic from the scaffolding, mixed with the burnt coffee wafting out of catering tents. Security was tighter than I'd ever seen. ID checkpoints layered like airport security, each one with guards who didn't make small talk. Ray met me near the staff entrance. He was wearing a high-vis vest and an expression like he'd been awake for days. He handed me a lanyard with a black and gold pass that simply read V. No barcode, no name. Just the letter. "Keep this visible at all times," he said. "And remember, VIP doesn't mean the influencer section. You'll be working the other one." His tone made it clear there was no need to ask what the other one meant. When we walked toward the VIP area, I noticed how its layout differed from the public zones. It was built high on a platform, shielded from view by double layers of black fabric. No one outside could see in, not even from the stage's side angles. Inside, it was quieter, cooler with a breeze from large industrial fans. White leather sofas formed neat lines facing the stage, and glass tables were set with untouched bottles of expensive champagne. Everything felt too clean for a festival, like the mess and chaos outside didn't exist here. That was when I saw the list. It wasn't a guest list, it was an itinerary. Each time slot had initials next to it, not names. Next to mine, it just said prep/contain. The word contain lingered in my mind longer than it should have. Astroworld had its own weather that day. The sun burned high and merciless over Houston, but down on the festival floor, the crowd moved like a single restless tide. You could feel it even from the elevated VIP platform. The constant press of bodies shifting closer to the stage, the swell of cheers when the bass from the sound check shook the ground. Inside our section, it was almost unnervingly calm. The stage tech spoke in low voices, eyes darting toward earpieces. Catering staff moved with the kind of brisk precision you usually only see in hotel banquet halls. I kept waiting for the casual chatter you get before a big headliner, but it never came. Everyone seemed like they were pacing themselves for something that wasn't on the public schedule. Around mid-afternoon, Ray walked past me, speaking quietly to a woman in all black. Tailored blazer, sunglasses, hair slicked back so tightly it caught the light. I caught fragments of their conversation. Something about ensuring the frame is stable and visibility from all angles. She nodded once, like it was confirmation of a blueprint neither of them had to explain. That was when I first heard the word glass. It passed between them like code, too casually placed to be decoration talk. I told myself it was probably a new piece of stage design, maybe something for an encore stunt. Still, it struck me that they didn't say a glass structure, just the glass, as if it was already a known entity in the room. As the sun dropped lower, the sound system began sending out test pulses. Not the usual tight snare or kick drum check, but deep, long bass notes that seemed to linger in the air. They were tuned so low you could feel them under your ribs, the kind of frequency that makes conversation feel unnecessary. Outside the VIP section, the crowd roared with each pulse. Inside, we simply waited. When I finally saw it, the word glass made sense. At the center of the VIP area, just far enough back from the railing to avoid being seen from below, stood a tall, transparent enclosure. It wasn't a cube, more like a display case from some futuristic gallery, taller than a person, edges lined with faint white light that traced every panel. The kind of structure that was too flawless to be assembled on site. It looked shipped in, already perfect. It didn't belong at a music festival. It belonged in a museum, or worse, in a place where people go to be studied. The floor inside was a single unbroken slab, seamless with the walls. Overhead, a small grid of hidden lights glowed faintly, throwing long, sharp reflections across the inside. No one approached it at first. It just stood there, waiting, as though it knew its moment would come. I noticed small camera lenses mounted discreetly at each corner, angled inward. Then the delivery came. A man was escorted in through the side, not hurried, but also not free to wander. His head was lowered, shoulders curved inward like the weight he carried wasn't physical, but invisible. The security detail didn't jostle him. They simply kept a measured pace, their formation a quiet wall. When they reached the glass, one of the staff tapped on a hidden panel. The front opened smoothly, no hinges, no creak. The man stepped inside without hesitation, like he'd rehearsed this part. Once the door closed, the light inside brightened slightly, pulling him into harsh clarity. He didn't wave to anyone. He didn't acknowledge the stage. He just began to move, not like a dancer, but like someone completing a set of steps they'd been told to repeat until it became second nature. The motions were deliberate, stripped of personality. And the longer I watched, the more I realized this wasn't a performance for the crowd outside. It was for us. Or maybe not even for us. Maybe for the cameras in the corners, for whoever would watch this later. From the main stage, the sound swelled. Those same low frequencies, but now braided with sharp, metallic tones that cut through the humid night air. It was the kind of sound that didn't just fill your ears, it threaded through your bones. Down in the field, you could see waves of motion ripple through the crowd, people leaning forward toward the barricades as if gravity itself was pulling them in. Inside VIP, the man in the glass kept moving in those practiced, almost mechanical patterns. I noticed the lighting on him was slightly out of sync with the rest of the show. While the main stage pulsed with blues and reds, the glass enclosure glowed with a muted gold, steady and unblinking, like it wasn't connected to the lighting desk at all. Then, something shifted. The activity around the VIP section thinned, as if the crew had been instructed to clear space, I saw one of the event coordinators press 2 fingers to their earpiece and give a subtle nod toward the stage. A moment later, the back curtain on the left wing parted. Out stepped a figure draped in a robe, gold fabric patterned with crimson lines that seemed to shimmer as they moved. They didn't stride or rush. They advanced slowly, with the kind of poise that made everything around them feel staged. As they approached the glass, the hum in the air thickened, almost imperceptibly louder. The robe caught the stage lights, making it impossible to look away. I realized everyone in the VIP section had turned their heads, even those who had been chatting moments before. The figure stopped just outside the enclosure, their presence commanding without a single word. The glass door slid open with the same silent precision as before. The man inside didn't pause. He stepped forward and mirrored the robed figure's stance, pressing his hands flat against the panel. The figure did the same from the outside, palms matching perfectly on the other side of the glass. I became aware of the LED screens behind the main stage changing. The rapid-fire visuals and crowd shots dissolved into slow, deliberate images. At first they were abstract, interlocking shapes and concentric rings, but the longer you looked, the more they resembled symbols. Not random graphic design, but emblems with meaning. Spirals inside circles, sharp geometric borders enclosing a single point of light. Each symbol flashed in time with a bass pulse that was now impossible to ignore. Beyond the VIP section, something was happening to the crowd. It began in small pockets. Clusters of people dropping to their knees, hands together, heads tilted upward. It wasn't chaotic like a surge. It was methodical, almost rehearsed. Others stayed standing, but their movements slowed to that same synchronized sway I'd seen earlier. Inside the glass, the man's breath fogged the panel, the condensation forming in short bursts like he'd been holding it in between motions. The robed figure slowly drew their hands back, breaking the mirrored posture. For a moment, neither moved. Then, in a voice that didn't come from any speaker, but seemed to settle directly into my skull, I heard, "This is the reason." I blinked hard, thinking it was some trick of adrenaline. But when I looked around, others in the VIP section had that same frozen expression, still alert, as though they'd all heard it too. The music on the main stage surged again, returning so abruptly it almost felt like a reset. Travis Scott was back in the center, commanding the crowd with high-energy shouts. But the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't the wild, erratic energy of a festival peak anymore. It was locked in, unified, like the entire audience was moving on the same invisible string. That's when I noticed her, standing at the far end of the stage, half in shadow, still as a statue. She wasn't part of the lighting crew or a dancer. She didn't have a headset or an instrument. She just watched. Her face caught a stray beam of light, and I saw it clearly. Eyes so dark they seemed to drink in the light around them. No whites, no reflections, just a depthless black that made it impossible to tell where her gaze landed. Instinct told me to leave. I stepped backward, but the air felt thicker now, like trying to walk through water. My legs moved slower than they should have, every step deliberate. When I reached the edge of the VIP platform, I risked one last glance over my shoulder. The glass case was empty. No sign of the man. No open door. Just the light bouncing off those pristine panels, clean as if no one had ever been inside. The first thing I noticed was how the air changed. One moment, the night was alive with that constant festival hum. Cheering, music bleeding from the stage, bass rattling in your chest. And then it was gone. Not faded, not muffled. Cut. The lights over the main stage snapped to darkness, but it wasn't the kind of blackout you get between songs. This one felt heavier, almost physical, like the absence of light carried weight. I heard a few startled laughs from the field at first, the kind of sound people make when they're not sure if they should be worried. But then came the stillness. From the VIP platform, I could see thousands of bodies frozen mid-motion, all facing the stage, as though they'd been turned toward it by some unseen cue. No one pulled out their phone flashlight. No one shouted for the music to come back. They just waited. Inside the darkness, the glass enclosure glowed faintly from within, as if it had its own source of light unaffected by the blackout. The panels pulsed with a dim reddish hue, in rhythm with that low hum that had been building all night. My skin prickled. The man was no longer inside. The robed figure had vanished. And then, from somewhere in the void beyond the stage, a spotlight flared to life. It landed not on Travis, not on the DJ booth, but on a new figure emerging from backstage. The robe was gone. In its place was something more elaborate. Shoulder pieces that caught the light in jagged points. Layers of fabric patterned in symbols I couldn't place. They moved to the center of the stage and raised their arms, not in greeting, but like someone about to deliver judgment. What happened next was stranger than anything I'd seen in my years around live shows. The crowd didn't scream, didn't cheer. Instead, pockets of people began to kneel in perfect unison. Those still standing rocked gently on their heels, arms at their sides, eyes fixed forward. I scanned the sea of faces and realized most of them weren't even blinking. In the VIP section, a woman in a sequined dress sank to the ground beside the sofa, her movements smooth, unhurried, as if following instructions no one had spoken aloud. To my right, a man in an expensive leather jacket pressed his palms together and mouthed words I couldn't hear. On the LED screens, new visuals began to fade in. Slow, deliberate imagery. A sun breaking apart into shards. A pair of hands cupping something unseen. Circles within circles, spinning in counterpoint to one another. The pace was hypnotic. Each frame lingering just long enough for your mind to start decoding it before shifting to the next. The figure on stage began to walk. Each step perfectly measured, their gaze sweeping the audience as though confirming something. Then they stopped, turned toward the crowd, and lowered their head in a gesture that was both blessing and command. That's when the chanting began. Low at first, like a vibration in the air, then rising in volume until it was louder than the hum. A faint mechanical whine cut through the chanting. I looked up, following the sound toward the rafters above the stage. From the darkness above, a massive structure began to descend. At first, I thought it was some oversized prop, maybe part of a visual stunt. But as the light caught it, I saw it clearly. A chrome horse, gleaming as if freshly polished, every muscle and curve rendered with impossible precision. Its eyes glowed white, and along its flanks were intricate engravings that shimmered in sync with the bass pulses. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people began to cry openly, their faces lit by the reflection of the horse as it came closer to the stage. The figure stepped onto a platform beside it and mounted in one fluid motion. The rig lifted both rider and horse back into the air, turning them slowly in a wide arc above the audience. The LED screen shifted again, symbols overlapping into complex patterns. each line and curve locking into place with the precision of clockwork. In the VIP section, I felt my chest tighten, like the air itself had grown dense. My hands trembled, not from fear exactly, but from the sensation that whatever was happening was irreversible. When the lights finally returned, they did so all at once. No fade-in, no build-up, just a sudden flood of brightness over the field. The music picked up where it had left off, as if nothing had happened. But the crowd wasn't the same. They moved in slow, deliberate sways, their faces blank, eyes still locked on the stage even as the final notes rang out. And then it ended. No encore, no extended banter from Travis, no fireworks. Just a clean break. People began filing out, but not in the messy, stumbling rush I'd seen at every other festival. They moved in lines, unhurried, silent, except for the sound of their shoes on concrete. From above, it might have looked choreographed. The VIP section cleared quickly. The couches were empty, the champagne bottles untouched. I realized I hadn't seen the man from the glass again. I hadn't seen the robed figure either. And when I asked Ray, he just shook his head once and muttered, "Don't." The following morning, the headlines were predictable. Crowd surges, injuries, a few vague statements from organizers. Nothing about the blackout, nothing about the symbols on the screens, nothing about the figure in the robe or the chrome horse. It was as if those moments existed only for the people in that stadium. And even then, only for the ones who noticed. By midday, an unmarked envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was a single-page contract, dense with legal language. I didn't need to read it to understand. Sign, stay silent, and move on. I signed, but I didn't destroy my copy. Since that night, certain things have stayed with me. The way the hum seemed to live in my chest long after the music stopped. The way the crowd's movement synced without anyone telling them to. The way the glass enclosure glowed even when everything else was dark. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I think I hear it again. That low, patient hum. And I wonder if what I saw at Astroworld was meant to be a performance or an initiation.